The wind howled against the ancient storage tower, a perpetual scream that Wayne had long ago learned to tune out. 6 years on Thrir 9 had taught him the language of this desolate moon, the way the ice particles whispered secrets across dead plains, how the storm's intensity ebbed and flowed like tides of ancient data cycling through the tower's core. Inside his cramped living quarters, Wayne hunched over a desk scattered with data tablets and handwritten notes. The soft blue glow of his biotherm lamp cast long shadows across the curved metal walls, illuminating the cramped space he called home. The lamp, which provided both the light needed for his research and the essential heat to keep his extremities from freezing, hummed with a comforting vibration. Translation sequence 4912, he muttered, squinting at a series of interlocking glyphs that had eluded his understanding for months. Cross-reference with Sector 7 root languages. Wayne's breath fogged in the chilled air, despite the heating system's constant struggle against the moon's sub-zero atmosphere. Thrir 9 was never meant for long-term habitation, merely a storage outpost, a repository for data from a dozen extinct civilizations. What had once been a busy research station was now an abandoned relic, its corridors empty, save for a single, stubborn human scholar. The biotherm lamp flickered momentarily, and Wayne glanced at the power readings with a frown. Resources were always precarious here. The fusion generator buried deep beneath the tower's foundation was designed for intermittent use, not powering a permanent residence. Each day was a careful balancing of energy consumption warmth versus light research equipment versus life support. He rolled his shoulders, feeling the familiar ache of too many hours hunched over ancient texts. The archive tower rose 12 stories above the moon's barren surface, but Wayne rarely ventured above the third level or below the second sublevel. The rest of the facility remained dark dormant, preserving its secrets and conserving power. "Computer increase temperature by 2 degrees, he commanded, and the system responded with a reluctant whir, pushing marginally warmer air through the vents. Outside, the blizzard intensified. He could hear ice crystals striking the reinforced windows, a sound like distant gunfire. The weather monitoring system chimed, displaying an alert. Warning storm intensity increased to Category 4. External activity not recommended. Wayne scoffed. External activity hadn't been recommended in nearly 7 months. The perpetual winter storm had worsened over the past 2 years, part of the moon's erratic climate cycle that the original research team had apparently deemed unimportant in their briefings. He turned back to his work fingers, tracing the intricate patterns of an extinct language inscribed on a data crystal. The archival tower's purpose had once been clear preservation of knowledge, a noble cause that had drawn Wayne to this remote assignment. What was initially supposed to be an 18-month research journey had stretched to 6 years as Wayne became obsessed with cracking the encryption on the oldest data levels. After the Interstellar Academy had withdrawn funding, declaring the project indefinitely suspended, Wayne had made the decision to stay using his personal resources to maintain basic operations. The truth was, there was nothing waiting for him back on Earth, or any of the colony worlds. His academic reputation had been tarnished by a mistranslation of religious texts from the Sati Alpha system, a mistake that had inflamed tensions and indirectly led to the collapse of a crucial peace treaty. The archive tower offered not just a research opportunity, but a form of self-imposed exile, a chance at redemption through meticulous solitary work. Wayne was about to power down his workstation for a meal break when he heard a sound different from the storm's constant assault. A deliberate rhythmic tapping against the service hatch on the lowest level. 3 sharp knocks, a pause, then 3 more. He froze, listening intently. Perhaps it was just debris thrown against the structure by increasingly violent winds. The monitoring systems showed no spacecraft in the vicinity, and the emergency beacon had detected no distress calls. The knocking came again, more urgent this time. Wayne activated the security feed. The external camera showed only swirling snow and darkness, but someone was definitely at the service entrance. Impossible. No one could survive the surface conditions without specialized equipment, and no ship could have landed without triggering the proximity alarms. Grabbing a thermal jacket and a handheld light, Wayne descended to the ground floor pulse, quickening with each step. The hatch hadn't been opened in years. He keyed in the emergency override, and the mechanism groaned in protest before the seals disengaged with a hiss of escaping pressure. The hatch swung inward, bringing with it a blast of frigid air and swirling snow. Outlined against the storm stood a figure draped in tattered coverings, humanoid, but clearly not human. The visitor's skin, visible at the wrists and neck, was a pale blue-gray, with faint luminescent patterns that swirled beneath the surface. Large, opalescent eyes blinked against the sudden interior light. Wayne stood transfixed as the figure took a single step forward, then, with ceremonial precision, knelt on the metal floor grating. With shaking hands, the visitor unwrapped the coverings from around their throat, exposing more of the patterned skin to the warmth of the interior lights. "Graticavian shelter." The figure spoke, voice melodious, despite the obvious distress. "I offer self for warmth place." The alien female, Wayne thought, though he couldn't be certain, bowed her head, exposing the nape of her neck in what was unmistakably a gesture of submission. Her entire posture communicated desperate vulnerability and an offering of herself. "I don't understand," Wayne said, though he recognized elements of the visitor's language, a dialect similar to those spoken in the Outer Rim systems. The alien trembled, whether from cold or fear, Wayne couldn't tell. "Custom," she managed in halting standard. "Give self, for life debt. Storm kill. You save, I serve." With a jolt of understanding, Wayne realized what was happening. The stranger was offering herself her servitude, perhaps her body, in exchange for shelter. It was a ritual he had read about in his xenocultural studies, practiced among several nomadic species from the galactic rim, the exchange of personal autonomy for survival needs. "No," Wayne said firmly, shaking his head. "No life debt, no service." Confusion and fear flashed across the alien's features. She repeated the offering phrase more urgently this time, her hands pressed against the floor in supplication. "Please," Wayne said, softening his tone. He removed his thermal jacket and held it out to her. "Take this. Come inside. You don't need to offer anything." The alien hesitated, clearly, struggling to comprehend this deviation from the expected ritual. Wayne knelt to her level, not touching her, but bringing the jacket closer. "My name is Wayne. This is shelter, free, no cost." Finally, the visitor reached for the jacket with delicate six-fingered hands. "Ka," she said, touching her chest lightly. "I am Ka." Wayne nodded, standing and stepping back to give her space. "Come inside, Ka. The storm is getting worse." She rose with fluid grace, despite her evident exhaustion, and followed Wayne into the tower as the hatch sealed behind them, shutting out the howling winds of Threer 9 once more. Wayne led Ka to the common area on the second level, where the life support systems maintained the warmest temperatures in the tower. As they climbed the spiraling stairs, he watched her absorb every detail of the surroundings, her large eyes reflecting the ambient light with a silvery glow. Sit," Wayne said, gesturing to a chair near the heating unit. She hesitated before perching on the edge of the seat, still clutching his thermal jacket around her shoulders. Now, in better light, Wayne could see that her own clothing was a complex weave of fibers, unsuited for Threer 9's harsh conditions. The fabric appeared ceremonial rather than practical, with intricate patterns that matched the luminescent swirls beneath her skin. He moved to the small food preparation unit, conscious of her gaze following his every movement. "Are you hungry, thirsty?" Ka tilted her head, the gesture bird-like and precise. "Water, acceptable." Wayne filled a container with purified water and approached slowly, holding it out at arm's length. She accepted it with both hands, a gesture that seemed ceremonial rather than necessary. "Thank for water for warmth," she said, her voice gaining strength. "I learn standard symbols but speak difficult." "Your standard is good," Wayne assured her, settling into a chair opposite hers, maintaining a respectful distance. "What brought you to Threr 9? There's nothing here but the archive tower and the storms." Ka sipped the water, slowly, deliberately, as if gathering her thoughts. "Exile," she finally said the word precise and practiced. "I am sent away. Ship fail. Emergency land." She gestured vaguely toward the direction of the service hatch. "Walk 3 sun cycles. See light from tower." 3 sun cycles. 3 days crossing the frozen wasteland in inadequate clothing. Wayne's respect for her survival instincts grew. "Your ship crashed. Are there others?" A shadow passed across Ka's features. "No others, only Ka." The straightforward response carried an undercurrent of pain that Wayne recognized all too well, the sound of someone who had lost everything. He nodded, not pressing further. "You can stay until the storm passes," he said, though they both knew the storm might not pass for months. "There are unused quarters on this level. I can show you." Ka stood abruptly, her posture shifting back to the formal stance she'd adopted at the entrance. "Payment required. Custom demands balance. I offer—" "No," Wayne interrupted firmer this time. "No payment. No offering. That's not how humans do things." Her luminescent patterns flared briefly, a physiological response Wayne couldn't interpret. "Not understand. Always payment. Life energy exchange. Universal law." Wayne considered his response carefully. He was no xenoanthropologist, but he understood enough about intercultural interactions to recognize the danger of dismissing deeply held beliefs. "On Earth, my homeworld, and here in this tower, we have a different custom," he explained. "Called hospitality, helping those in need without expecting payment. It's a gift." "Gift," Ka repeated the concept seemingly foreign to her. "No balance, no energy exchange." "The balance comes later differently," Wayne said, improvising. "When you are safe recovered, you might help others in turn. The balance is with the universe, not between us directly." This explanation seemed to resonate with her. The tension in her posture eased slightly. "I understand. Delayed balance. Acceptable terms." Wayne nodded, relieved to have found a cultural bridge. "I'll show you where you can rest. Tomorrow we can talk more about your ship, see if repairs are possible." He led her to a small chamber that had once belonged to a junior researcher. The room had remained sealed since the evacuation, preserving its modest furnishings, asleep platform storage compartments, and basic amenities. "Rest," Wayne said, activating the room's environmental controls. "If you need anything, the communication panel by the door connects to the main living area." Ka moved to the center of the room, examining the unfamiliar space with cautious curiosity. "Sleep not required yet. Ka species different. Energy cycle longer." "Then rest however you need to," Wayne replied. "I'll be working on the 3rd level if you want to talk more." As he turned to leave, Ka spoke again, her voice softer. "Wayne Human. Thank you for warmth place. For hospitality custom." Something in her tone, vulnerability mixed with dignity, struck a chord within him. "You're welcome, Ka. Welcome to the archive tower." After showing Ka to her quarters, Wayne returned to his workstation, though his focus had entirely shifted from ancient data encryption to their unexpected visitor. He accessed the tower's limited database on sentient species, scanning for any information about beings matching Ka's physiological characteristics. The computer returned 3 possible matches, all from systems at the very edge of explored space. The closest match was a species called the Thraki, a nomadic culture known for their bioluminescent skin patterns and complex honor-based social structures. They were rarely encountered in human-controlled space, preferring the less regulated territories beyond the galactic rim. If Ka was indeed Thraki, her presence this far within Alliance territory raised questions. The database entry mentioned that exile was among their most severe punishments, reserved for what they considered irredeemable transgressions against natural order. What had she done to warrant such a sentence? And how had she ended up on Threr 9 of all places, a forgotten moon orbiting an uninhabited planet in a star system valuable only for its proximity to a major interstellar transit route. Wayne switched to the environmental controls, checking the tower's power consumption. With another person to support even temporarily, he would need to adjust the resource allocation. The fusion generator was operating at 71% capacity, higher than he liked, but still within acceptable parameters. If Ka stayed longer than a few days, they might need to reduce power to the upper levels and concentrate their living space further. A soft alert from the system interrupted his calculations. The external sensors were detecting a slow but steady pressure change in the atmosphere. The storm was intensifying beyond normal parameters. Wayne frowned, pulling up historical weather data. This pattern matched the lead-up to a Class 5 megastorm, the kind that came perhaps once every 3 or 4 years on 3 or 9. The last one had nearly breached the tower's outer defenses. The timing couldn't be worse. With the power systems already stretched, and an unexpected guest to care for a megastorm would push their situation from precarious to potentially dangerous. Wayne initiated a tower-wide diagnostic, focusing on structural integrity and shield capacity. As the system ran its checks, he prepared a simple meal from his carefully rationed supplies, a nutrient-dense stew that could be easily digested by most humanoid species. He wasn't sure about Ka's dietary requirements, but offering food seemed the next logical step in their awkward cultural exchange. He was about to use the communication panel to invite her to join him when he turned to find Ka standing silently in the doorway observing him. "I startled you," she said, her standard noticeably improved, even in these few hours. Apology offered. "It's fine," Wayne replied, regaining his composure. "I made food if you're hungry." He gestured to the pot of stew. Ka approached cautiously, her gaze moving between Wayne and the meal. She had wrapped herself in a blanket from the quarters he'd provided, the thermal jacket still visible underneath. The combination gave her an almost monastic appearance. "Smell is complex," she said, eyeing the stew. "What life forms?" "Synthetic proteins, mostly," Wayne explained. "No actual animals. All the meat here is cultured. The vegetables are from storage preserved." This seemed to satisfy her. "Acceptable for K-biology. Thank you for sharing energy source." They ate in silence for a while, Ka using the utensils with precise, practiced movements that suggested she had studied human customs before. Wayne found himself stealing glances at her, noting the way the luminescent patterns beneath her skin shifted subtly, with her movements creating complex flowing designs that seemed almost like writing. "The storm is getting worse," he finally said, breaking the silence. "We might be facing a major weather event, what we call a megastorm. It could last for weeks." Ka nodded, setting down her spoon. "I sensed pressure changes. Dangerous level approaching." "You can sense that?" "Yes. Thraki are sensitive to environmental fluctuations, survival adaptation." So she was Thraki. Wayne decided not to reveal that he had researched her species. "We should be safe in the tower, but we'll need to be careful with power consumption. The generator is already working harder than usual." Ka's patterns brightened briefly. "I reduce personal energy needs, minimal consumption." "That's not necessary," Wayne assured her. "We have enough. I just need to reallocate some resources." He paused, considering his next words carefully. "K, your ship. Is there any chance it could be repaired, or do you have any way to signal for help?" Her patterns dimmed noticeably, the swirls slowing to nearly imperceptible movement. "Ship destroyed. Beacon broken in landing. No signal possible." She met his gaze directly, her opalescent eyes somber. "No one would answer regardless. Exile is permanent sentence." The finality in her voice prompted Wayne's next question. "What did you do to be exiled, I mean?" Ka stood abruptly, returning her bowl to the food unit with mechanical precision. "Crime of existence," she set her back to him. "I live when should not. Cultural law broken by birth, not action." Before Wayne could inquire further, the tower's alert system chimed urgently. The diagnostic had completed, revealing a critical issue. The main power conduit to the upper levels was showing signs of imminent failure. If it collapsed entirely, the resulting power surge could damage the fusion generator itself. "We have a problem," Wayne said, studying the diagnostic report. "A critical power conduit is failing. If it goes, we could lose the generator." Ka turned back to him, her personal disclosure forgotten in the face of the immediate threat. "Show problem. Perhaps I assist." Wayne brought up the system schematic on the main display. "Here," he pointed to a pulsing red section in the tower's infrastructure. "The conduit connecting the generator to the upper levels is overheating. The storm is putting additional pressure on the shield systems, drawing more power than usual." Ka studied the schematic with surprising competence. "Design flaw. Power flow inefficient." Her six-fingered hand traced an alternative route through the system. "Secondary conduit exists here for emergency." Wayne blinked in surprise. "Yes, there's a backup system, but it's located in the lower storage levels. It hasn't been accessed in years." "We activate secondary redirect power flow," Kay stated, matter-of-factly. "Reduce strain on primary system." "We'd have to go down to sublevel 3, Wayne said, considering the risks. "Those areas have minimal life support and haven't been maintained. It could be dangerous." Ka's patterns formed what Wayne was beginning to recognize as an expression of determination. More dangerous than loss of all power during megastorm. She had a point. If the main conduit failed completely, they would be left with only emergency power enough for basic life support, but not enough to maintain the shield systems against a Category 5 storm. The tower, for all its ancient durability, wasn't invincible. "You're right," Wayne conceded. "We should try to activate the backup system." He moved to a storage compartment and retrieved 2 emergency survival packs. "But we go prepared. The lower levels might have atmospheric issues, structural damage, or worse." Ka accepted the pack he offered, examining its contents with quick efficiency. "When do we begin descent?" Wayne checked the power readings one more time, noting the increasing instability. "Immediately. The conduit could fail within hours." They suited up in thermal gear, equipping themselves with portable lights, atmospheric testing equipment, and basic tools. Wayne also brought a specialized data tablet for interfacing with the tower's older systems. As they prepared to descend to the lower levels, Wayne found himself studying Ka with growing curiosity. Her knowledge of power systems and her quick grasp of their situation suggested education and experience, far beyond what he would expect from someone described as an exile. There was much more to her story than she had revealed, but the immediate crisis took priority over his questions. "Ready?" he asked, checking her equipment one last time. Ka nodded, her expression solemn beneath the portable light's glow. "Laid path. I follow." Together, they entered the emergency stairwell that spiraled down into the rarely visited depths of the archive tower, leaving behind the relative safety of the inhabited levels for the unknown dangers below. The stairwell grew noticeably colder with each level they descended. By the time they reached sublevel 1, their breath formed clouds in the beam of their lights, and frost coated the metal railings. The emergency lighting functioned only intermittently, casting long shadows that seemed to move when viewed from the corner of the eye. Temperature dropping rapidly. Ka observed her voice echoing in the enclosed space. Air quality diminishing. Wayne consulted the atmospheric scanner attached to his wrist. Oxygen levels are still acceptable, but there's an unusual concentration of particulates, probably dust from deterioration. They continued downward, passing sublevel 2, which had once housed biological samples and research materials. The transparent walls of the containment units were now opaque, with frost, their contents long since removed or destroyed during the evacuation. "What function this place?" Ka asked, gesturing to the abandoned laboratories. "Research facility," Wayne explained, ducking beneath a partially collapsed ceiling panel. "Before it became just an archive. Scientists studied the indigenous microbial life of Threr 9, looking for applications in medicine and terraforming." "Find anything useful?" Wayne shook his head. "Not according to the records. The microbes were too specialized to this environment, couldn't survive in other atmospheres. They reached the entrance to sublevel 3, a massive pressure door with warning symbols etched into its surface. Some were standard Alliance hazard indicators, but others were in older scripts that even Wayne, with his extensive linguistic knowledge, couldn't fully decipher. "These markings," Ka said, tracing the alien symbols with a gloved finger. "Ancient warnings. Power danger." Wayne looked at her in surprise. "You can read them." A flicker of something hesitation perhaps crossed her features. Some symbols, similar to Thraki sacred writing, warning of energy imbalance. Wayne made a mental note of this unexpected linguistic connection as he input the emergency access code into the door's control panel. The mechanism groaned in protest hydraulics, straining against years of disuse. With a shuddering lurch, the door began to slide open, revealing a chamber that hadn't been accessed by human eyes in decades. Their lights illuminated a vast space filled with towering equipment, ancient power regulators, distribution nodes, and massive coolant tanks that reached from floor to ceiling. Unlike the upper levels which followed human engineering aesthetics, this chamber bore the unmistakable hallmarks of non-human design. The equipment was arranged in spiraling patterns, following principles that seemed more artistic than functional to the human eye. "Original builders," Ka whispered, a note of awe in her voice. "Not human construction." "No," Wayne confirmed, stepping cautiously into the chamber. "The archive tower predates human presence on Thrir 9 by at least 1,000 years. The Alliance found it abandoned, but still functioning, repurposed it for research and data storage." They moved deeper into the sublevel, following the schematic on Wayne's data tablet. The backup power system should be located near the center of the chamber, surrounded by a series of protective barriers. As they navigated through the alien machinery, Wayne noticed Kay's increasing fascination with their surroundings. Her luminescent patterns had brightened significantly, pulsing in what seemed like response to the dormant technology around them. "You recognize this design," he said, not a question, but an observation. Ka hesitated before answering. "Similar patterns in ancient Thraki temples, energy flow designs." She ran her hand along a curved conduit. "But this is older, much older." They reached a circular platform at the chamber's center, surrounded by what appeared to be control stations. The platform housed a crystalline structure approximately 2 meters tall, dark and dormant, connected to the ceiling and floor by intricate networks of conduits. "This is it," Wayne said, consulting his tablet. "The secondary power node. According to the schematics, it can take over from the main conduit if properly activated." He approached one of the control stations, wiping away layers of dust to reveal controls, unlike anything in the upper levels. Instead of standard interfaces, the panel featured recessed impressions, shaped for hands with 6 digits hands like Kay's. "I can't interface with this," Wayne realized, looking to Kay. "But you might be able to." Ka stared at the control panel, her patterns fluctuating rapidly. "Not coincidence," she murmured. "Connection between builders and Thraki. History forgotten or hidden." "Can you try?" Wayne pressed. "The main conduit won't last much longer." After a moment's hesitation, Ka removed her gloves and placed her 6-fingered hands into the recessed impressions. The fit was perfect. Immediately, the panel illuminated with a soft blue glow that matched the luminescence of her skin patterns. The crystalline structure at the center began to hum vibrations, passing through the floor beneath their feet. "System recognizing genetic pattern," Ka said, her voice taking on a distant quality. "Requesting authentication sequence." "What do you need to do?" Wayne asked, watching as symbols began to flow across the previously dark surfaces of the equipment surrounding them. "Sequence of thought patterns," Ka replied, her eyes half closed in concentration. "Emotional harmonics, not words, not touch. Thought-feeling authentication." Wayne watched in fascination as Kay's skin patterns began to synchronize with the flowing symbols on the alien technology. The chamber grew warmer as dormant systems awakened after centuries of inactivity. The crystalline structure at the center brightened, pulsing with increasing intensity. Suddenly, Ka's expression shifted from concentration to alarm. "Warning," she said urgently. "System detecting structural instability above. Ice accumulation weakening upper supports." Before Wayne could respond, a deep groaning sound echoed through the chamber. The tower's superstructure was shifting, responding to the redistribution of energy as the secondary power node came online. "We need to complete the activation and get out," Wayne said, checking his tablet. The main power conduit was showing critical failure warnings. "How much longer?" "Nearly complete," Ka replied, her patterns flowing rapidly. "Transferring power control now." With a final surge of energy, the crystalline structure blazed with blue-white light. The flow of symbols on the surrounding equipment stabilized, and Ka removed her hands from the control panel, stepping back as the system assumed automated function. "Transfer successful," she confirmed, checking the readings. "Secondary power now." She was interrupted by a violent shudder that ran through the entire chamber. Dust and small debris began to rain from the ceiling as warning symbols flashed across all active surfaces. "Structural collapse imminent," Wayne translated from his tablet's warnings. "The power transfer must have destabilized something. We need to get back to the upper levels." They turned to retrace their path, but another stronger tremor sent a section of ceiling crashing down, blocking their original route. Ice and twisted metal intertwined in an impenetrable barrier. "Alternative exit?" Ka asked, ducking as more debris fell around them. Wayne frantically consulted the schematic. "There's a maintenance shaft on the far side that should lead up to sublevel 1. This way." They raced through the collapsing chamber, dodging falling equipment and structural beams. The awakened technology continued to function despite the chaos, rerouting power through undamaged sections with an intelligence that seemed almost alive. As they approached the maintenance shaft, a massive support column began to topple directly in their path. Without hesitation, Ka lunged forward, pushing Wayne clear of the falling debris. The column crashed down, and for a heart-stopping moment, Wayne thought Ka had been crushed beneath it. Then he spotted her on the other side of the fallen column, separated from him by a narrowing gap, as more debris continued to fall. "Kay," he shouted, reaching toward the shrinking opening. "Go," she called back, her voice barely audible above the sound of collapsing machinery. "Shaft still accessible your side. I find another way." "I'm not leaving you," Wayne protested, trying to gauge whether he could squeeze through the gap to reach her. "No choice." Ka's luminescent patterns flared intensely. "Tower survival priority. I navigate sublevel, find alternative path. Meet above." Another violent tremor made the decision for them as the gap closed completely, sealing off any possibility of reaching Ka. The chamber was coming apart around them, and staying would mean certain death for both. "Sublevel 1, Wayne shouted through the barrier. "Try to reach sublevel 1, I'll find you." Whether she heard him or not, he couldn't tell. With no other options, Wayne turned and sprinted for the maintenance shaft, the sounds of destruction growing louder behind him. He reached the narrow vertical passage and began to climb using the embedded rungs that lined the shaft walls, his mind filled with concern for Ka and guilt at leaving her behind. The climb was arduous, the metal rungs slick with ice and condensation. Twice he nearly lost his grip, saved only by the emergency tethers on his survival pack. After what seemed like hours but was likely only minutes, he reached the access hatch to sublevel 1 and forced it open with shaking hands. Hauling himself into the comparative stability of sublevel 1, Wayne immediately activated his communicator. "Kaka, can you hear me?" Static answered him, the interference from the power fluctuations and structural damage disrupting the signal. He needed to find her, but first, he needed to ensure the tower itself wouldn't collapse entirely. Accessing a terminal, Wayne confirmed that the secondary power node was functioning successfully, diverting energy from the failed main conduit. The upper levels were stable life support systems operating normally. The damage appeared confined to the lowest sublevels. But Ka was still down there somewhere in the collapsing chambers of sublevel 3, possibly injured or trapped. Wayne gathered emergency medical supplies and a more powerful communication device, preparing to descend again by an alternative route when the terminal chimed with an unexpected alert. Motion detected in the emergency stairwell between sublevel 2 and sublevel 1. Wayne rushed to the stairwell entrance, hope and dread warring within him. The door slid open to reveal Ka covered in dust and showing signs of injury. A jagged cut across her forehead leaked a silvery fluid that glowed with the same luminescence as her skin patterns, but alive and moving under her own power. "Kay!" Wayne exclaimed, rushing to support her as she staggered through the doorway. "You're hurt." "Minor damage," she replied, though her voice sounded strained. "Found alternative path through old ventilation system. Small spaces. Advantage of exile training." Wayne guided her to a nearby bench, retrieving a medical scanner from his pack. "Let me check your injuries." She sat with careful precision, her movements betraying more pain than her words acknowledged. "Tower status." "Stable now," Wayne assured her gently, cleaning the cut on her forehead. "The secondary power node is functioning perfectly. You did it, you saved us." "We saved," Ka corrected, wincing slightly, as Wayne applied a regenerative bandage to her wound. The scanner showed no life-threatening injuries, but she had sustained significant bruising and a mild concussion. "We need to get you to the upper levels," Wayne said. "Better medical equipment there and more comfortable recovery conditions." Ka nodded, allowing him to help her to her feet. As they made their way toward the stairwell that would take them upward, she stumbled, nearly falling. Without thinking, Wayne caught her one arm around her waist, the other supporting her arm. The contact brought them closer than they had been since her arrival, and he felt a strange warmth emanating from her skin, even through the layers of thermal clothing. "Thank you," she said softly, her large eyes meeting his. Something shifted in that gaze, trust perhaps, or the acknowledgement of a debt that ran deeper than her initial offering at the service hatch. "That's what friends do." Wayne replied the word friends, slipping out before he had consciously chosen it. Ka's patterns brightened momentarily. "Friends," she repeated, as if testing the concept. "Yes, better than life debt. More balanced." Together, they ascended toward the living quarters, leaving behind the damaged sublevels and the ancient technology that had formed an unexpected bridge between their disparate worlds. In the days that followed, Wayne focused on two priorities: maintaining the tower's now stabilized power systems and helping Kay recover from her injuries. The megastorm had arrived in full force, battering the external shields with unprecedented ferocity. Outside visibility was reduced to zero, the viewing ports showing only a solid wall of swirling white, punctuated by occasional flashes of electrical discharge. Ka proved to be a surprisingly resilient patient, her physiology apparently evolved for rapid healing. The cut on her forehead had sealed itself within 48 hours, leaving only a faint, silvery line that was gradually fading. Her strength returned quickly, though she still moved with careful deliberation to avoid aggravating her bruised ribs. What changed most noticeably was the dynamic between them. The cultural awkwardness of their first encounter had given way to something resembling companionship. Ka had abandoned the formal mannerisms of their early interactions, speaking more freely and asking questions about Earth-human customs and Wayne's research with genuine curiosity. She remained reticent about her own past, however. The subject of her exile was clearly painful, and Wayne didn't press for details, though his academic mind burned with questions about Thraki culture and their apparent connection to the tower's original builders. On the 5th day, after the sublevel incident, Wayne found Kay in the common area, studying the data tablets from his research station with intense concentration. Interesting reading," he asked, setting down a tray with their meal, a synthetic protein dish flavored with the last of his preserved herbs. Ka looked up her patterns, forming what Wayne now recognized as an expression of excitement. "These glyphs," she said, pointing to a sequence he had been struggling to translate. "They are not random patterns. They are songwritings." "Songwritings." Wayne settled across from her, intrigued. Yes. In ancient Threki tradition, important knowledge preserved through melody text, not read silently, but sung in specific tonal patterns. Her fingers traced the intricate symbols. This sequence, when voiced properly, activates neural pathways, makes information stick in memory. Wayne stared at the tablet with newfound appreciation. That would explain why traditional translation algorithms failed. They're treating it as written language only, not as multisensory information. Precisely. Ka confirmed her patterns, forming complex swirls that seemed to mirror the glyphs themselves. I could demonstrate if acceptable. Please do. Wayne encouraged, pushing aside the meal in his eagerness to witness this breakthrough. Ka's posture straightened as she focused on a specific sequence of symbols. She drew a deep breath and then began to produce a sound unlike anything Wayne had heard before, part melody, part speech, with harmonics that seemed to resonate with the very structure of the tower itself. The luminescent patterns beneath her skin flowed in perfect synchronization with the sounds, creating a mesmerizing audio-visual display. When she finished the short sequence, Wayne sat in stunned silence. The demonstration had triggered something in his mind, a sense of understanding that transcended conventional linguistics. The symbols now seemed obvious, their meaning clear, where before they had been impenetrable. That was incredible, he finally managed. I could feel the meaning forming directly in my mind. Ka's patterns shifted to what Wayne had come to recognize as pleasure. Songwritings designed this way bypass conscious translation, speak directly to deeper mind. This changes everything, Wayne said, excitement building as he considered the implications. 6 years I've been trying to crack these encryption patterns, and they weren't encryption at all. They were instructions for how to perceive the information. He quickly accessed his main research database, scanning through years of collected data with fresh eyes. If this principle applies to the core archive data, we could be looking at the most significant linguistic breakthrough in decades. Ka watched him with quiet amusement. Humans always searching for keys when sometimes door not locked, just open differently. Wayne laughed, the sound echoing strangely in the chamber that had known only his solitary presence for so long. You're right. Sometimes we're so focused on breaking through that we miss the invitation to walk around. Their eyes met over the scattered data tablets, and Wayne felt a connection forming that transcended their cultural differences, a shared intellectual excitement, the joy of discovery bridging worlds. The moment was interrupted by a power fluctuation that dimmed the lights briefly before they stabilized. Wayne frowned, checking the system readouts on his wrist display. The secondary node is functioning correctly, he noted, but the storm is drawing more power than anticipated. We might need to shut down some non-essential systems to conserve energy. I help, Kay offered immediately. No tower systems now. Can optimize power distribution. Together, they spent the next several hours reconfiguring the power allocation throughout the tower, shutting down unused areas, and rerouting energy to critical life support and shield systems. They worked with surprising efficiency, their different perspectives complementing each other. Wayne's methodical human approach, balanced by Kay's intuitive understanding of the tower's alien design principles. As they completed the final adjustments, the storm outside reached a new level of intensity. The entire structure vibrated with the force of the gale, and warning alerts illuminated the control panels. Shield integrity at 82%. Wayne reported, monitoring the readings. Still well within safety parameters, but this storm is like nothing I've seen in 6 years. Ka moved to the viewing port, placing her palm against the transparent barrier. Not natural pattern, she said quietly. Cyclical but augmented. Someone altered weather dynamics of this moon. Wayne joined her at the viewport, watching the fury of the storm. You think this was done deliberately, terraforming gone wrong? Or right, depending on purpose? Kay's reflection in the viewport showed patterns of concern. If goal was to make moon uninhabitable, success achieved. The implication hung between them that someone had intentionally engineered Threer 9's climate to discourage habitation, perhaps to protect the archive tower and its contents from interference. The original builders, Wayne mused, creating a natural defense system that would outlast their presence. Logical, Ka agreed. Data valuable enough to preserve, dangerous enough to protect. They stood side by side, watching the storm rage against the tower's defenses, united in their contemplation of ancient purposes and present dangers. Wayne became acutely aware of Kay's presence beside him. The subtle warmth she emanated, the gentle pulsing of her luminescent patterns, the quiet rhythm of her breathing. In that moment, he realized how profoundly his solitary existence had been transformed by her arrival. After years of self-imposed isolation, he had forgotten the simple comfort of shared silence, of not being alone with his thoughts and failures. "I'm glad you found the tower," he said softly, not looking at her. "Even if the circumstances were difficult." Ka's patterns shifted to a configuration he hadn't seen before, slower, more deliberate pulses that created a gentle glow. "Exile brought unexpected gifts," she replied. "Safety when expected death. Knowledge when expected ignorance." She paused, her next words barely audible above the storm. "Friendship when expected servitude." The frankness of her response stirred something in Wayne, a protective impulse mixed with growing curiosity about the circumstances that had brought her to this remote outpost. Before he could respond, however, the tower's security system chimed with an urgent alert. "Power surge detected in primary communication array," the automated voice announced. "Potential external transmission detected." They exchanged alarmed glances. The communication array had been dormant since Wayne's last official contact with the Interstellar Academy 3 years ago. Nothing on Threer 9 should be generating transmission signals powerful enough to activate the array. "Could be storm interference," Wayne suggested, already moving toward the control terminal. "Or not," Ka replied, her tone grave. "Signal could indicate search vessel." The implication was clear. Someone might be looking for Ka, and not with benevolent intentions. Wayne accessed the array controls, scanning for the source of the activation. The readings were confusing. The signal appeared to be coming from within the tower itself, specifically from an object in the living quarters. "There's something generating a transmission in your room," Wayne said, looking at Kay with confusion. "Did you bring a communication device from your ship?" Ka's patterns dimmed dramatically, fear evident in her posture. "Not communication device, tracker." Her voice had lost its newly acquired confidence, reverting to the formal cadence of their first meeting. "Embedded in ceremonial pendant. Did not know was active." A tracker. Wayne struggled to process this new information. "Who's tracking you? Why?" Ka's hands moved to her neck, drawing forth a small medallion that had been concealed beneath her clothing. The object was simple in design, a disc of silvery metal, etched with symbols, similar to the glyphs in the archive. "This belonged to sister," she said, her voice tight with emotion. "Twin sister executed for crime we both committed, being born as duplicates." "Executed," Wayne echoed, horrified. "For being a twin." Threki law, most ancient, Ka explained her patterns, forming complex, agitated swirls. "When identical births occur, one must join with universal flow, be sacrificed to maintain energy balance. My sister volunteered to save me, gave me her identity marker before ritual. I kept hidden were her name, her life pattern." Her luminescent patterns dimmed to near darkness as she continued. "Deception discovered when true DNA pattern revealed during medical procedure. Council ordered immediate execution to restore balance. I fled instead." She held up the medallion. "Did not know sister's marker contained tracking function, activated perhaps by power surge during sub-level collapse." Wayne struggled to comprehend the cultural framework that would condemn someone to death simply for being born a twin. Yet the pain in Ka's voice was unmistakably genuine, the trauma of losing her sister and living under constant threat of execution, all too real. "How long do we have?" he asked, shifting focus to the immediate threat. Before they find you. If hunting vessel detected signal days, perhaps. Dependent on current location. Ka clutched the medallion tightly. I should leave. Draw danger away from tower. Leave into a Category 5 megastorm. That's suicide, Wayne protested. And where would you go? Your ship is destroyed. Better than bringing executioners here, Ka argued. They will not hesitate to destroy tower, to eliminate imbalance. Cultural imperative overrides all other considerations. Wayne moved to the control terminal, making a decision that surprised even himself. We're not letting them find you. With swift keystrokes, he began reconfiguring the tower's shield harmonics. I'm going to mask the signal, make it impossible to pinpoint its location within 50 kilometers. Ka watched him with growing astonishment. You would protect fugitive against laws of my people. Your people's laws in this case are wrong, Wayne said firmly, continuing his work on the terminal. No one deserves to die for the crime of being born. As the new shield configuration activated, Wayne turned to face Ka directly. I spent 3 years translating religious texts from the SETI Alpha system. I made one critical error, a single glyph misinterpreted that resulted in the phrase, cherish the different, being translated as purify the different. That mistake inflamed existing tensions and contributed to the collapse of peace negotiations. His voice grew heavy with the weight of memory. Thousands died in the conflict that followed. I've spent 6 years here trying to atone for that mistake through perfect, meticulous work. He gestured to the terminal, to the shield that now protected Ka from detection. I won't be party to another injustice, not when I have the power to prevent it. Ka stood motionless, her patterns flowing in slow, meditative waves. Sister said same words before end. That law was wrong. That difference should be celebrated, not eliminated. Her large eyes glistened with moisture. Tears Wayne realized, though, they shimmered with the same luminescence as her skin patterns. My true name is Kaya, she said finally. K was Sister's designation taken to honor her sacrifice. No one has called me by true name since separation. Kaya, Wayne repeated softly, the name feeling right somehow. We'll find a way through this, together. The medallion in Kaya's hand pulsed, once then went dark, as the tower's shields fully masked its signal. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but within the archive tower, something fundamental had shifted, a declaration of defiance against injustice, a promise of protection that transcended cultural boundaries. Wayne and Kaya spent the next several hours enhancing the tower's defenses, preparing for the possibility that the tracking signal had been detected before they managed to mask it. Wayne reconfigured the automated security systems, while Kaya, with her innate understanding of the tower's original design, identified hidden defensive capabilities that had lain dormant for centuries. Original builders created emergency protocols. She explained, activating a previously unknown console within the central control room. Tower can generate localized atmospheric disturbances, further confuse tracking systems. Wayne watched in fascination as Kaya's 6-fingered hands danced across the alien interface, her luminescent patterns synchronizing with the activation sequences. The connection between your people and the tower's builders can't be coincidental, he observed. The physiological compatibility is too precise. Kaya nodded her focus, remaining on the console. Growing suspicion that Threki not originate on Homeworld, claimed by Council. Evidence suggests we descended from builder species memories lost through deliberate cultural erasure. Cultural erasure? Wayne echoed, intrigued, despite the tense circumstances. Ancient texts speak of Great Purification Period, when all records of origin destroyed, replaced with creation mythology that justified hierarchical structures and biological laws. Her patterns formed complex scholarly configurations, including twin sacrifice ritual. The implications were staggering: an entire civilization potentially built on falsified history, using manufactured traditions to control its population. Wayne's academic mind raced with questions, but the immediate threat took precedence. "How much time do you think we have?" he asked, returning to the practical concern of potential pursuers. Kaya's expression grew solemn. "If signal-detected hunting vessel would notify Central Council. Official sanction required for execution outside Thraki space. Process normally takes 7 to 10 cycles." "A week to 10 days, Wayne translated. "The storm should have passed by then, at least partially. We'll have better sensor capability, be able to detect any approaching vessels." They worked through the night, pausing only briefly for sustenance and rest. Wayne found himself increasingly impressed by Kaya's technical knowledge and adaptability. The frightened supplicant figure who had knelt at his threshold seemed worlds away from the confident individual who now worked alongside him as an equal. As dawn approached, though the concept was merely academic on a moon engulfed in perpetual storm, they finally completed their preparations. The tower was as secure as they could make it, with multiple layers of detection countermeasures and enhanced shield configurations. Exhausted, they retreated to the common area. Wayne prepared a simple meal, while Kaya, driven by curiosity, continued to study his research materials on the archive's ancient data stores. "Your work here," she said as he placed a food container before her, "seeking to preserve knowledge of extinct civilizations. Noble purpose." Wayne settled across from her, fatigue evident in his movements. "More penance than nobility, if I'm honest. After the SETI Alpha incident, preserving knowledge correctly became an obsession." Kaya considered this her patterns, forming thoughtful configurations. Mistakes not defined by occurrence but by response afterward. You chose restoration path. There was something immensely comforting in her perspective, the idea that redemption lay not in perfect performance, but in the commitment to make things right. It was a concept Wayne had been reaching for during his years of solitary work, though he hadn't been able to articulate it until now. "What will you do?" he asked carefully. "If we succeed in evading your pursuers, where would you go?" The question seemed to catch Kaya off guard. Her pattern slowed, dimming slightly. "Never considered survival past immediate escape. Existence without purpose or place." She looked around the chamber, her gaze lingering on the research materials. "Perhaps continue learning about tower builders' true Thraki history. Find path to reform cultural laws." "You could stay here." Wayne suggested, the words emerging before he had fully considered them. "The archive tower has resources protection. We could research together your knowledge of songwritings combined with my linguistic database. We might uncover truths that could change your people's future." Kaya's patterns brightened with unmistakable hope, but hesitation remained in her expression. Dangerous proposal. If found here, both would face consequences. Thraki Council not forgiving of interference with cultural mandates. "I've been alone on this moon for 6 years, Wayne said, meeting her gaze steadily. "I came here seeking atonement through isolation. But perhaps true atonement isn't found in hiding from connection, but in standing firm against injustice when confronted with it." Something shifted in Kaya's expression, a recognition of shared purpose that transcended their different origins. "Together then," she said softly, "until fate decides otherwise." They finished their meal in companionable silence, the unspoken weight of their situation balanced by the newfound sense of partnership. Afterward, exhaustion claimed them both, and they retired to their respective quarters, the tower's automated systems maintaining vigilant watch over the storm-racked landscape. Wayne slept deeply for the first time since Kaya's arrival, his dreams filled with unfamiliar melodies and flowing patterns of light. He woke to the tower's communication alert, a persistent chime that indicated an incoming transmission. Fully alert in an instant, he rushed to the control room, finding Kaya already there, her expression tense as she monitored the signal source. "Interstellar vessel," she reported grimly. "Standard approach vector requesting communication." Wayne checked the identification protocols. "It's not a Thraki vessel," he realized with surprise. "It's an Alliance diplomatic ship, designation Harmony of Spheres." They exchanged puzzled glances. The Alliance had abandoned interest in Thrair 9 years ago, withdrawing all research funding and personnel. Why would a diplomatic vessel suddenly appear, especially during the most severe storm season? Response required, Kaya reminded him. Silence will raise suspicions. Wayne nodded, activating the communication array. This is Archive Tower 3R9, Wayne Elliott, Supervising Researcher. Identify your purpose, harmony of spheres. The response came after a brief delay, the visual component distorted by atmospheric interference. Archive Tower. This is Ambassador Leon of the Interstellar Alliance. We are conducting a routine check of remote outposts following unusual energy signatures detected in your sector. Request permission to dispatch shuttle once weather permits. Wayne muted the transmission temporarily, turning to Kaya. This isn't routine. The Alliance hasn't checked on this outpost in years, and they certainly wouldn't send an ambassador for a simple status report. Energy signature from sub-level activation, Kaya suggested. Awakening ancient systems may have triggered long-range sensors. Her patterns formed concerned configurations. Or diplomatic cover for Thraki request. Alliance has trade agreements with Council, might honor extradition request. Wayne considered their options. Refusing the visit would only heighten suspicions and potentially provoke forceful intervention. Agreeing would give them time to prepare to control the circumstances of the encounter. We accept with conditions, he decided, reactivating the transmission. Ambassador Leon, weather conditions on 3R9 are currently at dangerous levels. Our forecasting indicates the storm will diminish sufficiently for safe shuttle approach in approximately 3 days. We will provide landing coordinates at that time. Understood, Archive Tower, the ambassador replied. Harmony will maintain orbit and await your signal. Ambassador Leon out. As the transmission ended, Wayne turned to the sensor controls, initiating a deep scan of the orbiting vessel. Let's see exactly what we're dealing with. The scan results confirmed the ship's Alliance registry, but revealed an unusual detail. The vessel had recently docked at a Thraki outpost near the galactic rim before changing course toward Thrair 9. Not coincidence, Kaya said, examining the data. They know I'm here. Or they suspect, Wayne corrected. They don't have confirmation. And they're approaching through official Alliance channels, which means they're constrained by Alliance protocols. He began accessing the tower's database on interstellar law, including prohibitions against executing non-citizens without due process. Kaya's patterns formed skeptical configurations. Thraki Council considers me non-person, outside protection of any law. But the Alliance doesn't recognize that designation, Wayne argued, pulling up relevant legal precedents. There have been similar cases, individuals condemned under cultural laws, seeking protection under Alliance statutes. The principle of sapient rights takes precedence over cultural autonomy in matters of life and death. He continued his research, growing more animated as potential defenses emerged. We have 3 days to build a legal case and a strategic response. You know Thraki law intimately. I have access to Alliance legal frameworks. Together we might find a path that even an ambassador can't dismiss. Kaya's initial skepticism gradually transformed into cautious hope as they immersed themselves in preparations. They created a detailed documentation of the twin sacrifice ritual's historical development, identifying inconsistencies and contradictions within Thraki cultural texts. Kaya's knowledge of songwritings proved invaluable, allowing them to analyze subharmonic components of traditional execution rites that suggested deliberate falsification of historical mandates. Simultaneously, Wayne established a secure data backup of all their findings, encoding it within the archive's primary storage matrix, where it would be protected by the tower's most ancient security protocols. If something happened to them, the truth about Thraki cultural manipulation would survive. As the storm gradually diminished in intensity, they finalized their strategy. The plan was risky, dependent on specific legal interpretations and the ambassador's willingness to consider evidence that challenged long-established cultural practices. But it represented Kaya's best hope for survival, and potentially for transforming the fate of other Thraki twins, who might otherwise face ritual execution. On the morning of the third day, with the storm reduced to manageable levels, Wayne transmitted landing coordinates to the Harmony of Spheres. The designated landing zone was a reinforced platform adjacent to the tower's main entrance, visible from the control room, where Wayne and Kaya waited. "Remember," Wayne said, checking the security systems one final time. "We state our case calmly, presenting evidence rather than accusations. The tower's recording systems will document everything, creating an official record that would be difficult for the Alliance to ignore." Kaya nodded, her patterns flowing in measured, deliberate configurations that projected calm despite her evident tension. She had abandoned the tattered coverings of her arrival, now dressed in a spare research uniform that Wayne had modified to accommodate her physiological differences. The medallion that had been her sister's identity marker hung openly around her neck, no longer a hidden talisman, but a declared connection to her past. "Whatever happens," she said quietly, grateful for shelter, for recognition of personhood, for... She hesitated, her patterns forming a configuration Wayne had come to recognize as emotional significance. "For seeing me as Kaya, not aberration." Before Wayne could respond, the tower's sensors detected the approaching shuttle, a sleek, diplomatic vessel, bearing Alliance insignia. It descended through the thinning storm clouds, with practiced precision, settling onto the landing platform with minimal disturbance. "They're here," Wayne said unnecessarily, watching as the shuttle's hatch opened to reveal three figures in diplomatic attire. "Ready." Kaya straightened her posture, her luminescent patterns bright and steady. "Ready." Together, they moved to the tower's main entrance, arriving just as the airlock cycled to admit their visitors. The ambassador entered first, a tall, elegant human woman, whose silver-streaked hair and poised demeanor suggested both age and authority. She was flanked by two aides, one human and one distinctly non-human, a Thraki male, whose luminescent patterns glowed with formal intensity. "Researcher Elliot." Ambassador Leon greeted him with a diplomatic smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Thank you for accommodating our visit under such challenging conditions. I trust you've been well during your extended assignment." "Well enough, Ambassador," Wayne replied evenly. "Though, as you're undoubtedly aware, my assignment officially ended 3 years ago when the Alliance withdrew funding for the Archive Preservation Project. I've been maintaining the facility independently since then." The ambassador's smile tightened slightly at this reminder. "Indeed. Your dedication is noted." Her gaze shifted to Kaya, the diplomatic mask slipping to reveal momentary surprise. "And this is..." "My research partner, Wayne," said, deliberately avoiding any mention of Kaya's arrival circumstances. "Specialist Kaya has been assisting with translation of the Archive's oldest data stores, particularly those related to the tower's original builders." The Thraki aide stepped forward, his patterns forming aggressive accusatory configurations. "This individual is no researcher," he stated flatly. "She is Thraki designation K-928, condemned to execution for violation of prime balance law. Her presence here constitutes a legal evasion of cultural mandate." "Her name is Kaya," Wayne corrected firmly, "and her situation falls under Section 17 of the Alliance Charter regarding sapient rights preservation. We've prepared a comprehensive case demonstrating that the cultural mandate in question is based on falsified historical records and contradicts the Alliance's non-negotiable protection of life." Ambassador Leon's expression hardened. "Researcher Elliot, this matter is more complex than you appear to understand. The Alliance has binding agreements with the Thraki Council regarding cultural autonomy. We cannot simply ignore an official extradition request based on your interpretation of their traditions." "Not interpretation, evidence." Kaya spoke for the first time, her voice steady, despite the Thraki aide's blatant hostility. "Songwritings in archive prove alteration of cultural texts. Twin sacrifice, not original law, but later addition coinciding with resource shortages and population control needs. She touched the medallion at her neck. My sister gave life believing in false tradition. Her sacrifice deserves truth, not perpetuation of manipulation. The Thraki aide's patterns flared with unmistakable anger. Blasphemy. You dare question eternal mandates with stolen identity marker. He turned to the ambassador. This demonstrates urgency of immediate extraction. Corruption spreads through her continued existence. Wayne moved slightly, positioning himself between Kaya and the increasingly agitated aide. Before any decisions are made, Ambassador, I insist that you review our evidence. Alliance protocols require examination of all relevant materials in sapient rights cases. A tense silence followed as Ambassador Leon weighed her options. The diplomatic consequences were clearly complex. Denying the Thraki request might strain valuable trade relationships, but bypassing established rights protocols would create a dangerous precedent. Very well, she said finally. We will review your evidence. However, I must insist that the subject remain under observation during our assessment. Kaya stays with me. Wayne stated not a request, but a declaration. And any review happens here within the tower, where Alliance protocols can be properly observed and recorded. The ambassador's eyes narrowed slightly, recognizing the implied threat that Wayne was ensuring any proceedings would be documented, preventing any off-record arrangements with the Thraki authorities. As you wish, she conceded. Present your evidence in the tower's conference facilities. We will process the information with all due consideration. What followed was an intense, meticulously documented presentation of their findings. Wayne outlined the legal framework, while Kaya demonstrated the songwritings using her natural abilities to reveal hidden meanings in ancient texts. They presented charts showing the suspicious timing of the twin sacrifice ritual's introduction, coinciding perfectly with population pressures following a resource crisis in early Thraki history. Most damning was the evidence buried deep within the archive records from the tower's original builders that mentioned Thraki genetic engineering, specifically the introduction of twinning as a desired adaptation for survival on low-resource worlds. These records directly contradicted the Thraki Council's claim that twins represented a cosmic imbalance requiring correction. Throughout the presentation, the Thraki aide grew increasingly agitated, his patterns shifting from dismissive to concerned as the weight of evidence mounted. Ambassador Leon maintained a neutral expression, but her careful note-taking suggested she recognized the significance of their findings. After 5 hours of detailed exposition, Wayne concluded their case. Ambassador, the evidence is clear. The twin sacrifice ritual was implemented as population control disguised as religious mandate. Continuing this practice with knowledge of its true origins would constitute complicity in cultural genocide. The Alliance cannot extradite Kaya without violating its own foundational principles. The conference room fell silent as the ambassador considered their argument. The Thraki aide leaned in, speaking urgently in his native language, but she silenced him with a raised hand. Your evidence is compelling, she admitted reluctantly. However, I cannot unilaterally overturn centuries of diplomatic policy based on a single case, regardless of the merits. Then, don't overturn it, Wayne proposed. Initiate a formal review. Grant temporary protected status pending investigation of historical records. The Charter provides clear mechanisms for such cases. The ambassador's expression suggested she was calculating political costs and benefits. The Thraki Council would view any delay as interference in cultural matters. Trade relationships could suffer significant damage. And how would the public view the Alliance sanctioning ritual execution once these findings are published? Wayne countered. Because they will be published. I have already encoded the evidence in a data packet scheduled for broadcast to every major academic institution in Alliance space. It was a bluff. The tower's communication array lacked sufficient power for such a widespread transmission, but the ambassador couldn't know that. Her expression shifted as she recognized the potential public relations disaster the Alliance's supposed champion of sapient rights, facilitating a culturally mandated execution proven to be based on historical falsification. "You're threatening the diplomatic stability of an entire sector," she observed coolly. "I'm defending a fundamental right to exist," Wayne corrected. "The Alliance was founded on the principle that no sapient being should die for accidents of birth or biology. Either those principles mean something, or they're just convenient political theater." Ambassador Lian glanced at Kaya, who had remained composed throughout the proceedings, her patterns flowing with dignified determination. Something in that steady gaze, perhaps, the unmistakable intelligence and personhood it conveyed, seemed to tip the scales. "I will recommend temporary protected status pending review by the Alliance Ethics Council," the ambassador decided. "Specialist Kaya will remain here under your supervision, Researcher Elliot, until a final determination is made." She turned to the Thraki aide, whose patterns had formed furious configurations. "The Thraki Council will be invited to present counter-evidence during formal hearings. This offers the most balanced approach under Alliance protocols." The aide began a heated protest, but the ambassador silenced him with a gesture that brooked no argument. "My decision is recorded and witnessed," she stated firmly. "We will depart within the hour. Formal documentation will be transmitted from the Harmony of Spheres." After the ambassador and her aides had returned to their shuttle, Wayne and Kaya watched from the control room as the vessel lifted off, disappearing into the storm-threatened sky. "They will return," Kaya said quietly. "Thraki Council will not accept decision easily." "I know," Wayne acknowledged. "But we've gained time and official recognition of your case. The evidence is too strong to be dismissed entirely, especially once it reaches public awareness." He moved to the communication array, initiating a sequence that would broadcast their findings not to every academic institution, as he had threatened, but to selected researchers and rights advocates who would ensure the information spread widely enough to prevent quiet suppression. "What now?" Kaya asked her patterns, forming questioning configurations. Wayne turned from the console, meeting her gaze directly. "Now, we transform the archive tower from a repository of dead knowledge into a living testament. We continue translating the songwritings, uncovering the truth about your people's past and the tower's original purpose. We build a case so compelling that no diplomatic pressure can overcome it." His voice softened as he added, "And we make this place a home, not a place of exile or penance, but a beginning." Kaya's patterns brightened, forming the complex, multi-layered configuration that Wayne had come to recognize as joy. "Home," she repeated the word, holding new significance. "Built on truth, not obligation. On choice, not custom." Outside, the storm continued to diminish, revealing patches of Threer 9's star-filled sky for the first time in months. Within the archive tower, ancient systems hummed with renewed purpose, preserving not just data, now, but something more precious, the living voices of those who challenged falsified histories and fought for the fundamental right to exist. In the days that followed, Wayne and Kaya established a new routine, dividing their time between research tower maintenance and preparation for the inevitable official response to their broadcast. The Alliance Ethics Council acknowledged receipt of their evidence, initiating a formal investigation that would likely take months to complete. The Thraki Council predictably issued a formal protest declaring Kaya a non-entity whose continued existence threatened cosmic balance. But with the case now in official channels and public awareness growing, direct intervention became politically complicated. Wayne expanded the tower's communication capabilities, establishing connections with researchers across Alliance space who were intrigued by their discoveries about the original builders and their connection to Thraki origins. What had begun as a defense of Kaya's right to live evolved into something larger, a scholarly movement questioning the authenticity of multiple cultural mandates that had been presented as immutable traditions. For her part, Kaya delved deeper into the tower's oldest data stores, her natural affinity for the original interfaces revealing layers of information that had remained inaccessible for centuries. she discovered that the tower had never been intended as merely passive storage, but as a living archive, a dynamic repository where knowledge evolved through interaction with diverse perspectives. On a quiet evening, 6 months after the ambassador's visit, as they shared a meal in the common area that had become their primary living space, Kaya looked up from her data tablet with an expression of wonder. "Found something remarkable," she announced her patterns, forming excited configurations. Activation sequence for tower's core function, not just preservation, but transmission. The archive was designed to broadcast accumulated wisdom across galactic distances. Wayne set aside his own research, intrigued. "A communication system. I always wondered why a storage facility would need such powerful energy capabilities." "Not just communication," Kaya clarified. "Communion. Direct mental-emotional exchange across space-time barriers. The songwritings were preparation, teaching methodology for conceptual transfer beyond language limitations." She hesitated, her pattern shifting to a more solemn configuration. "Requires dual activation. Two distinct but harmonious consciousnesses, creating balanced energy signature." Understanding dawned slowly. "Like the dual hand impressions in the sub-level control panel," Wayne recalled. "The system was designed for cooperation between different perspectives." Yes, original builders believed true wisdom emerged from diversity in unity. Kaya's patterns formed the complex swirling configuration that Wayne had come to recognize as deep emotional significance. Perhaps why twins sacrifice so tragic irony. Culture destroys very balance it claims to preserve. Wayne moved to her side, examining the activation sequence displayed on her tablet. "Could we actually do this? Activate the core function?" "Theoretically, yes. Combined human-Thraki neural patterns might create precisely the diversity matrix system requires." Kaya's large eyes met his, conveying both excitement and apprehension. "But consequences unknown. Power requirements immense." They spent the next several weeks preparing for the attempt, carefully studying the protocols and reinforcing the tower's power systems. The fusion generator would be pushed to maximum capacity, potentially risking overload, but the potential discovery was too significant to ignore. On the day of the activation, with Threer 9's unpredictable weather temporarily calm, they stood before the central interface on the tower's top level, a chamber Wayne had rarely visited during his years of solitude. The circular room featured a crystalline dome that offered a panoramic view of the moon's barren landscape and star-filled sky. At the chamber's center stood a pair of control pedestals, each shaped to accommodate different physiologies, one designed for 6-fingered hands, the other for 5. Between them rose a crystalline spire that mirrored the larger structure they had activated in the sublevel months earlier. "Last chance to reconsider," Wayne said, surveying the ancient technology with a mixture of academic excitement and practical caution. "We don't know exactly what will happen when this activates." Kaya's patterns formed resolved, steady configurations. Truth worth risks. Knowledge meant for sharing, not hoarding. She moved to her designated pedestal, 6-fingered hands hovering above the recessed impressions. "Ready when you are." Wayne took position at the second pedestal, aligning his hands with the interface designed for human physiology. They exchanged a final glance, no longer the desperate exile and the solitary scholar of their first meeting, but partners in a shared pursuit of knowledge and justice. "On 3, Wayne suggested. 1, 2, 3. They placed their hands on their respective interfaces simultaneously. Immediately, the crystalline spire between them illuminated with brilliant blue-white energy that spiraled upward, patterns matching the luminescent configurations flowing beneath Kaya's skin. The entire chamber hummed with vibration, the sound harmonizing into a complex melody that seemed to resonate with Wayne's very thoughts. Images formed in his mind, not visual projections, but direct mental impressions. He saw the tower as it had been when newly constructed, surrounded not by barren plains, but by a thriving research community. He felt the builders' purpose, their commitment to preserving diversity of thought and experience against forces of homogenization and control. Most powerfully, he experienced the emotional urgency behind the archive's creation. The builder's recognition that knowledge divorced from compassion became merely another form of power, weaponized and ultimately self-defeating. Beside him, Kaya gasped as her own mind filled with complementary impressions. Her patterns flowed in perfect synchronization with the spiraling light, creating an audio-visual symphony that transcended traditional communication. "They're showing us," she whispered, voice filled with wonder. "Not just telling, allowing us to experience their journey." The energy increased in intensity, the spire's light expanding to fill the entire chamber. Wayne felt a momentary fear that they had triggered something beyond their control, but the sensation passed as the system stabilized, pulsing with steady, controlled power. Abruptly, the crystalline dome above them transformed from transparent to reflective, creating a projection surface that displayed a stellar map, the galaxy as it had existed when the tower was built, with key points illuminated to indicate other archives scattered across vast distances. There are more, Wayne realized, understanding flowing directly into his consciousness. A network of living archives preserving the diversity of galactic knowledge against catastrophe. Yes, Kaya confirmed, receiving the same information through her connection. And now reawakening. Our activation sending signal across network. Dormant systems reinitiating after millennia. The implications were staggering, not just the recovery of lost knowledge, but the revival of an ancient purpose, an alternative vision of galactic community, based on preservation of diversity, rather than imposition of uniformity. As the activation sequence completed, the energy reconfigured, focusing into a tightly controlled beam that shot upward through the crystalline dome and into Threer 9's sky. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then responses began to appear on the stellar map points of light, awakening one by one as distant archives acknowledged the signal. Communion established across impossible distances, connecting minds and purposes separated by time and space, yet united in the fundamental recognition of knowledge's true purpose, not dominance, but understanding, not control, but growth. Wayne and Kaya remained connected to the system for hours, absorbing information that would have taken decades to process through conventional research. When they finally withdrew their hands from the interface, the energy continued to flow, the archive now fully awakened to its original purpose. They stood in stunned silence for several moments, processing the experience. Wayne felt fundamentally changed. His perspective expanded beyond the limitations of individual consciousness, his understanding of his own research transformed by direct communion with the builder's intent. "It worked," he said finally, the simple words inadequate to express the magnitude of what they had experienced. The living archive is active again. Kaya's patterns formed configurations of profound emotion, luminescence flowing in complex harmonies that matched the energy still spiraling through the chamber. More than active, broadcasting, sharing our discoveries about Threki history, about twin sacrifice deception. Truth now impossible to suppress. She turned to face him, her large eyes reflecting the blue-white energy that continued to pulse through the chamber. What we began as survival strategy now becomes liberation movement. For all twins. For all those condemned by falsified traditions. Wayne understood the truth of her words. What they had activated was not merely an ancient communication system, but a testimony that could not be silenced, evidence broadcast at a level that transcended political manipulation or diplomatic pressure. "The Alliance Ethics Council will have to acknowledge this," he noted. "It's not just our interpretation anymore, it's direct evidence from the civilization that preceded the Thraki themselves." "And Council must face uncomfortable truth," Kaya added. "That entire cultural identity built on deliberate manipulation of history." The full significance of their discovery continued to unfold in the days that followed. The energy beam remained active, connecting the archive tower to its counterparts across the galaxy. Information flowed both ways, their discoveries about Thranky history transmitted outward, while new knowledge from reactivated archives flowed in, filling the tower's data stores with previously lost wisdom. 3 weeks after the activation, they received an official communication from the Alliance Ethics Council. The message was brief, but unequivocal. Kaya had been granted permanent protected status based on irrefutable evidence of historical falsification in cultural mandates. Furthermore, the Council had initiated a broader investigation into the twin sacrifice ritual, with preliminary findings already leading to the rescue of 17 Thraki twins who had been scheduled for execution. The Thraki Council, faced with incontrovertible evidence and growing internal dissent, reluctantly announced a temporary suspension of the ritual pending cultural reevaluation. It was a face-saving measure that nonetheless represented a fundamental shift, the first acknowledgement in centuries that their most sacred mandate might be based on deliberate deception. On the evening after receiving this news, Wayne found Kaya in the observation chamber, seated beneath the crystalline dome, watching as pulses of energy continued to flow between the archive tower and the distant stars. Her patterns formed peaceful, contemplative configurations as she absently touched the medallion that had once been her sister's identity marker. "Your sister would be proud," Wayne said softly, settling beside her. Her sacrifice wasn't in vain. It led to this moment, to the truth finally being heard. Kaya's patterns brightened at his presence. She always believed truth would emerge eventually. That sacrifice was temporary necessity, not eternal mandate. She turned to face him, her large eyes reflecting the starlight. Now her name lives on in every twin saved from ritual. Better memorial than any monument. They sat in companionable silence for a time, watching the energy beam connect their small moon to the vastness of the galaxy. So much had changed since Kaya's desperate arrival during the megastorm, not just their individual circumstances, but their understanding of purpose, of connection, of possibility. "What happens now?" Wayne finally asked. "With the tower awakened, your status secured. What do you want for your future?" Kaya considered the question, her patterns forming thoughtful configurations. "Archive needs guardians who understand its true purpose. Knowledge preserved not as static artifact, but as living wisdom." She met his gaze directly. "Would continue work here, with you, if acceptable." Wayne felt an unexpected warmth spread through him at her words. During his years of self-imposed exile, he had convinced himself that solitude was the appropriate penance for his past mistakes. Kaya's arrival had shattered that illusion, revealing that true restoration came not through isolation, but through connection, not through perfect performance, but through the courage to stand for truth when it mattered most. "More than acceptable," he replied, his voice softer than intended. "I can't imagine continuing this work without you now." Kaya's patterns formed the complex, multi-layered configuration he had come to recognize as joy, her luminescence brightening the space between them. With deliberate grace, she extended her six-fingered hand toward him, not in the formal gesture of her arrival, but in a simple, universal offer of connection. Wayne took her hand in his, the differences in their physiologies somehow perfect in their complementarity, like the dual interfaces that had awakened the archive, designed for different forms, but aligned in purpose. Outside, Threr 9's perpetual storms gathered on the horizon once more, but within the reawakened tower, a different kind of energy flowed, the power of truth acknowledged, of diversity, celebrated, of connection across differences that once seemed unbridgeable. The living archive continued its silent communion, with the stars preserving not just information now, but something far more precious. The testimony of two beings from different worlds who had found in each other's differences not a threat, but a completion. Not an imbalance requiring correction, but a harmony that awakened ancient purposes and opened new possibilities. In that moment, beneath the crystalline dome that connected them to distant worlds, Wayne and Kaya made an unspoken promise to continue the work they had begun, to guard the knowledge they had recovered, and to build a future founded not on fear of difference, but on the recognition that true balance comes not from uniformity, but from the dynamic interplay of distinct voices united in common purpose. The medallion at Kaya's throat caught the light of the energy beam, transforming from a symbol of loss and hidden identity to an emblem of remembrance and proclamation, a visible declaration that she existed, that she mattered, that her voice joined with countless others across the galaxy in a testimony too powerful to silence and too profound to ignore. She had offered herself for mere shelter on that storm-racked night months ago, expecting only the most basic survival in exchange for complete submission. Instead, she had found warmth, recognition, purpose, and ultimately a home built not on cultural mandates or life debts, but on the simplest and most revolutionary of foundations, the recognition of inherent worth, the right to exist, the freedom to choose connection rather than have it imposed. As the energy beam pulsed overhead, connecting their small outpost to the vastness of galactic communion, Wayne and Kaya turned their gaze from the stars to each other, finding in that shared look a promise more binding than any ritual, more authentic than any tradition, more enduring than any mandate, the promise of a future written not in the language of obligation, but in the songwritings of freely given trust, freely chosen purpose, and freely expressed truth.